Trash housekeeper! Hurry up and prepare the meal! Instead of worrying about me as I collapsed from dizziness, my husband George shoved me away annoyingly and glared at me with irritation. As his attitude drained the color from my face, I slumped to the floor, leaning against it, while he started watching TV, ignoring me completely. Staring blankly at this unbelievable scene, someone suddenly appeared behind George, blurting out words of surprise to him. "Is that all you have to say?" Right after, George turned around to see who it was and his face turned pale with shock. "My name is Marie. I'm a 34-year-old housewife. I've been married to George, who is 5 years my senior, for almost 2 years now. These 2 years have been like living in hell." "What is this disgusting meal? Didn't you learn to cook from my mom?" For the first year of our marriage, I lived with his parents. It was, so to speak, training for marriage. George is an extreme mama's boy, and his mother, Catherine, was what you'd call a zealously educational mom. She was incredibly strict about manners, my rules. No talking back aloud. A perfect example of a parent whose behavior negatively influences their children. A woman should be this way, and it's only natural to respect your husband. A wife who can't prioritize her husband is just useless. Raised in such a family environment, George was looking for a wife like his mom, he murmured when we first got married. Unaware of all this, I was easily swayed by his sweet talk, resulting in a hellish marriage. "Marie, what I want for you is to be a devoted wife to George, supporting him. For that, I'll need to be tough on you, to raise you strictly. All of this is to ensure you two can live happily as a couple. Please bear with it." As Catherine declared, from the day we started living together, she used me like a servant. Doing chores was a given, and reading the room was a must. I had to wake up earlier than anyone in the family, and I wasn't allowed to rest until I had sent everyone off to work. I had to start eating after everyone else and finish before them, or I'd be lectured for an hour. Any slight difference in taste would result in being verbally beaten by Catherine and George. They successfully trained me to be a wife who wouldn't dare defy her husband. Now, I'm scared to even express my opinion to him. If he comes home in a low mood, I spend the mealtime trembling in fear. What part of this is a harmonious family life? Now, I only have doubts, but back then, I was completely disheartened and didn't even have the energy to think about it. It's like you can't do any household chores properly. What has your mother taught you? At this rate, it would be easier to train a stray cat. About a week after starting to live in my in-laws' house, Catherine's true nature began to show, and from that moment on, I was subjected to daily sarcastic comments. Cleaning the hallway with a rag was the norm. Not a speck of dust or dirt was allowed. It was natural to serve homemade food to your husband. No matter how hard it was, cutting corners was not allowed. To top it off, I was told to do the laundry by hand. Even though there was a perfectly good drum washing machine right in front of me, I was not allowed to use it. For a housewife who has time on her hands, seeking convenience is outrageous. A housewife is supposed to suffer through hand pain. You're the first daughter-in-law I've seen who only learns to take it easy. While complaining loudly, Catherine effortlessly used the drum washing machine right in front of me. Unable to endure the overly harsh environment, I once cried to George for help, but he refused to listen to my concerns. How could you insult someone's mother like that? What kind of education did you receive to grow up into such a person? My family is perfect. Maybe it's your fault that mom has to discipline you so harshly? George never acknowledged any fault in his mother. Instead, he frequently misused the word discipline, as if he thought of me as no better than a dog or a cat. Mom is right. There's nothing wrong with what she says. It's like he's a follower. Completely brainwashed, he wouldn't even pretend to listen to me, settling everything with "it's all your fault." This was also reported to Catherine, and from the next day I was forced to go shopping on foot. I was not even allowed to use public transport for shopping trips, no matter how far. I had to walk everywhere. From now on, live your life in a dress. The disorder in your lifestyle stems from your behavior. Welcome your husband home in a dress. Eat all your meals standing up. I won't allow you to sit in a chair. The level of harassment I faced as his wife was beyond what could be dismissed with just a quaint word. I thought about running away, unable to endure any longer, but I had no parents, and my only sibling, my brother Tony, was married and living in India. I had nowhere and no one to turn to for help. I cried every day and night, gradually wearing down mentally. By the time we finished our marriage training and started living together, I was emaciated. I was drained physically and emotionally. "Honey, please. I feel sick. Can you let me go to the hospital?" About a week after we started living together. I hadn't had my period, and I was plagued by daily nausea and headaches. I decided to talk to George about my poor health. There was no chance of pregnancy since we hadn't been intimate since getting married. If not that, then perhaps it was indeed an illness. The headache was too severe to even get up, and my body felt weak and unresponsive like anemia. My condition was clearly severe, beyond what could be endured quietly. When I spoke to him with a pale face, he responded with annoyance and refused my request. "What do you mean by feeling sick? Be specific. You're always lacking in details. Are you even thinking before you speak? Raised spoiled by your parents, that's why you ended up like this. Thinking others will understand your feelings with just a little hint, that's why you can't manage yourself. I'm tired, you know. Don't waste my precious time with your words. Make your point quickly and specifically. Don't irritate me with every little thing." Hearing his sarcastic complaints made my ears hurt and worsened my headache. I regretted getting married in this insane situation. He never showed any signs of this behavior while we were dating, but as soon as we got married, this happened. He used to be kind, always sincere, and full of charm, popular at work. "Marie is really clumsy and can't be left alone." I worked at the same company as George. When I got the job at this major company after studying hard, Tony was so happy that he cried. At that time, my parents were still alive. So when I got the job, Tony came back from India for me, and we spent time together as a family. "If you ever have any trouble, call me anytime. Even if we're apart, I'm still your brother." Tony, 7 years my senior, really doted on me. There were aspects of George that reminded me of Tony, which drew me to him. He was caring, laughed off my clumsiness, sincere, smart, and a reliable big brother figure to everyone. He was someone I admired. "With the headache, nausea, and dizziness, I'll go get some medicine from the hospital, so please, could you give me some money for the consultation?" I couldn't feel a trace of his kindness from back then. Not a speck remained. Now, he seemed like a completely different person. Cruel to the point where the word brutal fits, not seeing me as a person. He looked at me with a scornful gaze, as if he was looking at trash, instilling nothing but fear in me. "It's all just indulgence." What? I didn't expect to receive any money honestly, but I was at a loss for words at his unexpected response. "Living as a housewife, being pampered, and yet you complain? Where in your lifestyle do you find the cause for dizziness, nausea, headaches? It's all just excuses to avoid doing household chores." "That's not. I didn't mean that." "Not working outside, And you talk about headaches. That's laughable. Just take some over-the-counter medicine and get over it. I won't allow a waste of money. The household finances were entirely managed by George's salary. He confessed before we got married that he couldn't do anything around the house and wanted me to handle the household chores as a housewife. Don't worry about money. Whether we have 3 or 4 kids, I'll earn enough working outside. I want you to do what I can't. Even I, as unreliable as I was happy to be of help to him. I had no hesitations about leaving my job if it meant being his support. I believed we would have a happy life together. But this was the reality that awaited me. I became like a bird trapped in a cage, forced into a constrained life. Enough, someone, please help me. After George, who wouldn't even consider my illness, stormed out of the living room in anger, I collapsed on the spot and cried. I was overwhelmed by a ceaseless flow of sorrow, lacking the will to fight back. I wanted to disappear. If I had to stay here, I'd rather end my life. Mentally and physically cornered, I left the house without telling him, heading outside. Walking for a while, I unknowingly passed near where my childhood home used to be. Having run out barefoot, I realized my feet were in tatters. I couldn't walk any further. It was a slightly chilly autumn. I was lightly dressed, so the cold wind made me shiver. What would happen if I just let the cold take me? Could I find an easy way to the next world? As I collapsed in front of the empty house that used to be mine, I lay down on the ground. I couldn't think of anything. I didn't want to. I just wanted to disappear. That's when I heard it. Through my hazy consciousness, I heard someone calling me. Hey! Hold on! Open your eyes! Feeling a sense of nostalgia for the unknown voice, my consciousness faded away. I woke up to find myself lying on the bed. Having shone an unfamiliar ceiling and slowly opened my eyes to a warm room and the smell of delicious bread. As I tried to sit up and look around to grasp the situation. Awake now? A slightly older man who felt strangely familiar stood there. As I felt wary of this person I didn't recognize, he saw my fear and laughed heartily. What, you don't remember? Well, no surprise there. It's been over 20 years, after all. Hearing his cheerful laughter and words, a memory flashed in my mind. Could it be Mike? Spot on. Long time no see, Marie. I was passing by your family's old house and saw you collapsed. Seriously freaked me out. What were you doing there? Mike. My childhood friend and Tony's best friend, with whom I used to play until middle school. He moved away when we entered high school, and though we lost touch, he and Tony had remained in contact, and apparently, he had heard a lot about me. Now, he's the owner of a transport company and a father of 2. I never thought Mike would be here. I was visiting my grandma's grave with my family and decided to take a trip here. More importantly, what happened? You were so cold when I found you, I rushed you to my parents' house. Mike's wife, Lily, a nurse, had assessed my condition and decided it was safe for me to rest, so they took me to Mike's parents' house. There, he kindly listened to my situation. Lily stayed by my side, crying at the story of a stranger, and hugged me, saying how hard it must have been. Unforgivable. Someone who can't see others as people should be left immediately. I also want to escape that house. But I have no relatives or friends to turn to. Lily's words were exactly what I had been thinking. But she understood my situation as well. Tears flowed as I spoke of my hardships, and she was visibly troubled, searching for words. If you had a place to live and a job, would that solve the problem? Huh? Hearing our conversation, Mike suddenly asked this, leaving me puzzled, unsure of what he meant. Then, he made a call, and after finishing the conversation, he turned to me with a bright smile. "Marie, we will definitely help you out. So, you're leaving that house? I'll support you." Confused by what he meant, Mike showed me a reassuring smile, signaling he's got this. Little did I know at that moment, this would be the start of my fight back. After hearing my situation, Mike took me in until my condition stabilized. Lily called George, and probably because it was someone else intervening, he didn't try to forcefully take me back. Being away from George seemed to have stabilized me mentally, and my physical condition improved somewhat. However, Lily strongly suggested I visit a hospital. "Marie tends to endure too much, thinking you can handle it, but don't underestimate the illnesses that come from mental stress. Once this is all settled, we must go to the hospital. I'll come with you." Her genuine concern was evident, and I gratefully accepted her kindness, prioritizing my rest for the time being. A week passed, and Mike said everything was ready, suggesting we go back to my house once. "If anything happens, call me right away. I have my mobile phone." "Mike, thank you for everything." Encouraged by his dependable words, I decided to return home. Mike accompanied me to the entrance, where George, flustered, welcomed us. "Marie, are you okay? How's your health? Anything wrong?" George, unlike his usual stern self, seemed to be playing the devoted husband, concerned for my well-being. His drastically changed demeanor filled me with fear. He hugged me as if to take me away from Mike, letting out a sigh of relief. "Marie, I was wrong. I failed to empathize with your suffering, and I'm responsible for the pain I caused. I'm truly sorry. Thank you for coming back." Frozen by his unexpected words, I met Mike's gaze, who silently mouthed "Be strong" to me before discreetly leaving so as not to arouse George's suspicion. Once Mike was out of sight, George stepped back and, ruffling his hair in frustration, let out a big sigh. "You know what you've done, right?" His words, muttered with annoyance, froze me with fear. His tone was now cold, as if he was bothered by the inconvenience I brought. Hesitant to enter, George forcibly pulled me inside and roughly let go of my hand. "Relying on some guy I don't even know. I never thought you were such a shameful woman." His hurtful words brought tears to my eyes. Despite my resolve to be strong upon returning, his gaze and harsh words made me tremble uncontrollably. "I'm scared. I want to leave. It's too hard." As these thoughts swirled in my heart, my vision darkened with dizziness. As I leaned on him, about to fall, he pushed me away in disgust, spitting out words with annoyance. "Stop with the act. I don't even want to touch someone as filthy as you." Pushed by him, I stumbled against the wall and collapsed in the hallway. Without a care for me, George turned on the TV, lounged on the sofa, and ordered me to do housework. "Housekeeper, get the meal ready. Because of you, I haven't had a decent meal in a week. Cooking and laundry are all you're good for, so hurry up and get it done." Looking around, I saw piles of laundry and dishes left out. The house in complete disarray. I can't do this anymore. I can't go on with this person. I want a divorce. Just as I thought this, someone approached George from behind and spoke up. "Is that all you have to say?" Shocked by the familiar voice, George slowly turned around to see the person standing there, his face draining of color. "Tony! Why are you here?" There stood Tony, supposed to be in India, his presence bringing panic to George's face. "Never mind that. What the hell have you been doing to my sister, huh?" Tony's intimidating presence made George tremble with fear. Tony, who had been working in civil construction in India, had grown bigger and more robust since leaving the US. It was no surprise that George, with his slender frame, would be intimidated by Tony's approach. Especially considering Tony's disdain for people who behave inhumanely. George's actions were unforgivable in Tony's eyes, making his anger entirely justified.
No, well, I was just educating my wife or guiding her.
Huh, I never knew that pushing a sick woman was part of educating your wife. George desperately tried to justify his actions. At that moment, Mike, who had supposedly left, peeked into the living room, flashing a refreshing smile and addressed George.
What are you doing here? How did you get in?
How? The door was unlocked. You have to check these things. Even with autolock, it won't work if the door isn't properly closed. What he pulled out was a thin handkerchief, stained as if it had been wedged in something.
No way!
When you hugged me, I dropped it on the floor so the door wouldn't close. That way, Mike and the others could easily get into the house later. Supported by Lily, I managed to stand up, despite feeling dizzy. George's expression, as he alternated between looking at me and Tony, was filled with panic and fear. Realizing the trick Mike and I had used to enter and that this had been planned from the start left George in shock. He had always left security concerns to me, so it was clear he wouldn't have checked the lock himself, assuming the door would lock automatically. He never worried about it, which was easy to predict.
I've heard all about it from Marie and Mike. You seem to have taken good care of my sister while I was in India. I've recorded this entire conversation. Marie has been meticulously keeping a diary of everything, and we've recorded all texts and calls from you. All of it has been submitted to a lawyer. We'll be demanding compensation for everything, including Marie's health issues. From now on, you'll deal with a lawyer regarding the divorce. Don't you dare come near our family ever again.
Everyone glared at George, protecting me and ensuring he had no allies. Tony spoke for me, preventing George's sweet words from swaying me. Hearing the word divorce, George became frantic, reaching out to cling to me. Wait. Please reconsider the divorce. I can't live without Marie. I need her to survive. George desperately tried to portray himself as pitiful. It was clear he needed me for various reasons, but his words no longer reached me. His true intention was to use me, to live comfortably at my expense, and to vent his frustrations on me. I knew what his sweet words really meant, and I wouldn't be fooled again. Mike and Tony bravely intervened to stop George's desperate attempts to win me back. From behind them, I finally voiced my long-suppressed feelings towards George with a coldness I had never shown before.
With you, I never had a moment of happiness in our marriage. It was a daily struggle, thinking only of escaping. Who would want to stay in such a home? I want nothing to do with you from now on. Don't you dare come near me or my loved ones ever again.
Perhaps because I had never shown my emotions like this before, George stopped resisting in shock. Overwhelmed by the reality before him, he collapsed, drained of all strength. Thus, I was finally freed from George's malevolence, and decided to move to India with Tony. After things settled down, I went straight to the hospital with Lily by my side, and was diagnosed with depression. Mike suggested that it would be best for my recovery to stay at his place for a while before starting a new life, and I gratefully accepted his offer.
We're here for you. You can rely on us for anything.
If that husband of yours tries to barge in, I'll kick him out myself. Just leave it to me. Tony and I deeply appreciated their reassuring words and kindness. The reason for Tony's return to US was a call from Mike, who had been on the phone with Tony at that time, informing him of my situation and convincing him to come back immediately.
Why didn't you rely on me?
Although Tony scolded me upon his return, knowing I struggled to ask for help, he also apologized for not coming to check on me sooner in US and hugged me tightly, apologizing repeatedly. Thanks to Tony's quick actions in arranging a lawyer and accommodation, the situation was resolved smoothly. From now on, live with us over there. Learning a foreign language might be tough, but my wife and friends will give you all the support you need, so don't worry. Saying so, Tony offered me a job at his company, where his colleagues welcomed me warmly. As for George, he and his mother were sued for moral harassment by us and are now chased by debts. After explaining everything to my former colleagues before leaving US, George lost his position at his company. Losing his credibility, life at the company became difficult for him, leading to his resignation. He now lives at his parents' home, scraping by on day-to-day jobs. He sent me a letter of apology which said the incident taught him that bad actions come back to haunt you. But of course, I couldn't trust his words and made sure to receive compensation from him. My long-living health finally came to an end. Now I live a comfortable and joyful life in India, surrounded by kind people.
Taking care of Dad and Mom is all on you, my dear wife. If you oppose, I'll divorce you and sue for alimony, huh?
Could he really believe such an absurd demand would pass? I looked at Georgina, utterly exasperated. Alex stood there boldly, giving me a nasty smirk while looking at me. He must think I would accept his demand. Indeed, I've complied with the requests for the sake of the in-laws, believing it was the right thing to do. Regardless of Alex, I thought those two were good people. But now, having seen Brittany's true nature, I've lost all concern, let alone any sympathy. I smiled back at Alex. All right then. Let's get a divorce.
Don't come crying to me later. Talking back to your husband, what a failure of a wife. Good riddance. Choosing your job over Dad and Mom. Unbelievable.
Oh, my apologies for that.
Exactly. I'd prioritize Dad and Mom over my job any day. Unlike you, who's utterly heartless.
Alex boasted too proudly. Then why didn't he take time off work now? Instead of pushing it onto me, he should just take a break and help out his parents. Blaming and pushing responsibilities onto me without lifting a finger, what a way to shift the blame.
From now on, even if we see each other at work, don't you dare speak to me. I should have chosen a different company.
Alex's parting words pushed me to my limit.
Then you're fired. What? Fired? You're not my boss. What are you on about? Gone mad from the divorce shock?
I couldn't help but reveal a truth Alex was unaware of. I'm Ren, 40 years old. I run an apparel company. I started this company at 26. Having lost my parents early, I motivated myself by setting goals and focusing on achieving them. Decades later, I've dedicated my life to stabilizing the business, working tirelessly. As my friends got married one by one, I didn't even have a boyfriend. There was no time to play. I traveled for work, both domestically and internationally. There were years I don't recall taking any time off. Surrounded by relatives and acquaintances, I was often met with veiled criticism disguised as concern.
Aren't you going to run out of time to have children if you don't hurry up? Is work really that enjoyable for you? Don't you get lonely?
Arguing back would only invite more nagging. So, I took to leaving those situations with a forced smile as quickly as possible. All the effort I poured into my life paid off, and the company's performance steadily improved. Finally, I could afford to take regular breaks and had the luxury to enjoy my personal life. By this time, I was already 38 years old. At this point, I wasn't particularly keen on marriage, but the idea of having a good partner was appealing. That's when I met my husband, Alex. Our meeting was sparked by a soccer game. Suggested by a subordinate, I went to watch a game on a whim and met Alex there, cheering for the same team, and we hit it off. After attending a few games together, we started going out, and then he asked me out. Alex was the same age as me, but seemed remarkably youthful. He had many hobbies, from baseball to video games, manga, and golf, dragging me along to all sorts of activities. Having never really had time to play before, my time with Alex was incredibly exciting and fun. Being my first boyfriend at 38, I was honestly quite thrilled. One day, Alex broached the subject. "Would you meet my parents?"
If I'm going to marry someone, it's going to be Ren. That's why I want to properly introduce you to them.
This was about 2 months into our relationship. Caught off guard, I couldn't refuse, always looking forward to the fun times with Alex. Things went smoothly, and a week later, we visited Alex's parents' house.
Oh my! To be dating such a lovely person, my son is a lucky man.
Indeed. What a wonderful young lady. And for Alex to introduce a girlfriend to us, that's a first. He must be really smitten. Warm and welcoming, Alex's parents showered me with compliments, leaving me flattered and embarrassed throughout the visit. Alex, sitting next to me, smugly commented,
"Right? A catch at 38. Right? A catch at 38.
Though crudely put, it seemed meant as a compliment in Alex's way. With such wonderful parents, I felt we could have a good relationship after marriage. I was relieved the meeting went well. However, I was slightly concerned that Alex referred to his parents as mom and dad. A calling I hadn't often heard from adult men in my circles, which initially surprised me. But considering the differences in each family, I decided not to dwell on it negatively. Alex seemed to have a good relationship with his parents, often praising his mother excessively. While endearing, some aspects felt off-putting at times. Like when the conversation turned to cooking. "What kind of dishes do you excel at, Ren?" "I wouldn't say I excel, but I often cook Western-style meals." At this, Alex enthusiastically chimed in.
Right. She makes steak a lot. They're edible, but when compared to Mom's cooking. Oh, that's a great idea. Why don't you teach her your recipes?
I understood the comfort of familiar tastes. But his wording left me feeling complex. Unperturbed by my feelings, Alex's mother was delighted.
Well then, I must compile a notebook for Alex's sake.
She was enjoying herself. As we were about to leave, a shocking truth came to light. "When are you two getting married?" asked by Alex's mother. Alex casually replied, causing me to be taken aback.
"I'd marry her right now if I could. It'd make life easier, especially since part-time work doesn't pay much." Part-time?
Indeed, when I first met Alex and inquired about his job, he vaguely mentioned something like sales. I too had been vague about my job, saying only something in apparel, as we were still just getting to know each other. Everyone has things they'd rather not discuss. I figured we could talk about it more once we got a bit closer. I had completely forgotten about it, never imagining he was working part-time. Stunned, Alex explained with a frustrated look.
What's with that face? Thinking even at 38? But, you see, there's a good reason for this.
Turns out, Alex's mother has always been frail and prone to sickness. Then, 2 years ago, his father fell ill and needed care. Alex, who was working in sales at a steel company at the time, quit to take care of his father, switching to a more flexible part-time job. Mom alone would have a hard time, right? I just wanted to be there for my parents. I thought it'd be fine to stay part-time for that reason. Alex glanced at his parents and nodded.
Recently, both Mom and Dad have been in good health, so I'm thinking of getting a full-time job again. I gotta work hard if I'm going to marry Ren.
Hearing about the part-time work, I felt ashamed of my disappointment. Alex had simply prioritized his parents over his job. What a kind and warm person he is. And now, he's thinking of what's best for me. After our conversation, I thought for a moment and then made Alex an offer. If you're interested, why don't you apply to my company?
Eh? Work at the same company as Ren?
Yeah. It's a bit different, but you were in sales before, right? We're actually looking for sales staff right now. I meant well with my suggestion, but Alex visibly grimaced. I'd rather work somewhere I can earn more. I want to make Mom feel secure. Did he think I wasn't earning enough? I explained more about our company. Showing him job listings, I pointed out the salary and holidays, along with other benefits. Alex, who had been skeptically browsing the site, gradually warmed up to the idea.
This might not be too bad after all.
And so, he applied to a position at my company. Fortunately, we were looking to significantly expand our sales department, so Georgina was hired. Pressured somewhat by his parents, we registered our marriage.
Who would have thought we'd end up working at the same company?
Indeed. By the way, which department are you in? It seems Alex still thought of it as just the company I work for, not realizing I'm the owner. I hadn't kept it a secret on purpose, but it felt awkward to bring it up, and I hadn't mentioned it yet. This seemed like a good opportunity, so, with a nervous heart, I was about to reveal the truth. Actually, Alex cut me off with an unexpected remark.
Well, it doesn't matter. I'll probably quit eventually anyway. Eh?
Quit. What did he mean by that? A bad feeling washed over me. Alex glanced at me and laughed, a smile I hadn't seen before. It scared me.
What? You got a problem?
No, it's not a complaint, but what do you mean? I'm not planning to quit my job now. Oh, unless we have kids. But my company offers maternity and paternity leave. Kids are out of the question. We're already busy with Dad and Mom. Dad and Mom? As I tilted my head, Alex mimicked me mockingly. Yeah, my parents. Didn't I say they need care? Rosalind? I heard, but you said they've been doing well lately. That's why you re-entered the workforce, right?
Even if they're doing well, they're still elderly, aren't they? Aren't you worried at all? Or what? As a wife, are you planning to shirk that responsibility?
I couldn't grasp what Alex was trying to say, feeling bewildered. I needed to clear my head and sort things out. Alex was trying to push the responsibility of caregiving onto me. And from how he spoke, it seemed he eventually planned to have me quit my job to prioritize caregiving. I'm not saying you should quit right away. Having 2 incomes helps financially. For now, just come back to the family home with me on our days off. What is that supposed to mean? I wasn't completely unprepared for the caregiving conversation. I had intended to help out, and I had thought that I could be of assistance in the future. But I never imagined being expected to return to my in-laws' house every holiday, eventually being burdened with caregiving responsibilities. What surprised me most was Alex's attitude. Before marriage, he was positive and reliable, but he changed drastically as soon as we got married. Is this person really Alex? I didn't want to believe it. This isn't the person I wanted to marry. I wanted to escape from reality by closing my eyes tightly, but Alex's angry voice relentlessly broke through.
Listen, you're my wife. Don't defy me. Got it?
I was so shocked by the change that I couldn't agree or disagree. I wish I hadn't married at all if I knew this would happen. Regret filled my mind, and the word divorce quickly followed. Society might frown upon a divorce so soon after getting married. But that seemed less important than wasting time with someone unpleasant. I prepared the divorce papers right away. The issue was the reason for divorce and the in-laws. The reason for divorce could be managed somehow. If necessary, I could even involve a lawyer. But the in-laws were a bigger concern. As Alex declared, we started visiting his parents' house on our days off. I was reluctant to go because Alex treated me poorly. But his parents were overjoyed every time we visited.
I'm sorry for making you come here on your day off.
No, it's okay. Brittany, teary-eyed with joy, made it impossible for me to rudely decline their hospitality. Every visit, they prepared my favorite sweets, telling me how much they appreciated it. Though I disliked being controlled by Alex, seeing Brittany happy made it difficult to bring up divorce, and time passed. By 2 months into our marriage, Georgina and I had started visiting his family home separately. Our days off just didn't align anymore. Initially, I had forced myself to adjust to Alex's schedule. Meanwhile, I had kept it a secret that I was the president of the company. The Alex before our marriage might have been fine, but revealing this to the current Alex would only invite trouble. Although it would be easy to find out if he looked into it, luckily, Alex seemed oblivious. Alex was a source of concern both as a husband and as an employee, causing numerous problems at work. I wanted to resolve the issues at work quickly and get a divorce. But what about Brittany? Despite everything, I didn't want to upset them. Torn, I headed to my in-laws' house as usual. Lately, I had become accustomed to entering the house without waiting to be invited. Today, as always, I opened the door and took off my shoes. That's when I heard a familiar voice from the back. Undoubtedly, it was Alex's voice. He was supposed to work today, but perhaps his schedule had changed. Feeling awkward, I walked down the hall and was about to enter the living room when I overheard their conversation.
That person, she's not very considerate, is she? And her housekeeping is subpar. She's earnest, but couldn't you find someone better?
Indeed, it was Brittany's voice. However, the tone was so full of malice, unlike anything I had heard from her before. It sounded like something out of a movie, so spiteful and unlike the Brittany I knew. Yet, it was unmistakably Brittany's voice. Despite all the praise she had given me, the thought of the gentle Brittany saying such things tightened my chest. I didn't want to hear any more, but my legs felt too heavy to move.
Sorry, Mom. But, you know, she's tall, so she might be able to carry you if necessary. With a bit of training, she could become more useful.
Well, for now, she's pleasant and financially supportive, so I suppose that's acceptable. We're hoping for potential, I guess. Alex and Brittany were laughing carelessly as they spoke. As I listened, my heart pounded with the realization that they were talking about me. Georgina's constant complaints were one thing, but I was shocked to discover Brittany's hidden side. Brittany, who always seemed so grateful, who would lower their head in thanks repeatedly, making me feel almost guilty. We shared laughs over snacks and meals I had cooked. Regardless of Alex's intentions, I thought I had a good relationship with Brittany. I had hesitated on divorce partly because of Brittany. Yet, according to their conversation, I was merely a caregiving resource for Brittany as well. Brittany then added insult to injury with this remark. For now, I'll keep praising her and egging her on. She looks so foolishly happy then. Alex, you should learn from me. A fool and his scissors are easily parted, as they say. Hearing this, I left the house as if fleeing. After calming myself down a bit, I contacted Alex and his family. I'm going to be busy for a while and won't be able to visit or contact you. I'll reach out again later. Despite multiple calls from both Alex and his family, I ignored them all. Alex's angry messages were even recorded on the voicemail.
Do you think you can trouble Mom like this? Apologize to her in person right now. You don't have the right to refuse.
As if anyone would comply after being spoken to like that. Naturally, I ignored this too. At work, I made sure not to run into Alex and started staying at a hotel after hours. During this time, I methodically prepared for divorce. Then, one day when preparations were sufficiently in place, I was finally caught by Georgina, who had been lying in wait at the office.
Hey! Ren!
Upon spotting me, Georgina looked like he was about to grab me but restrained himself, likely due to the presence of others. I decided to move the conversation to an empty conference room to talk with Alex.
I've been looking for you. What do you think you're doing? How many times have I called you? Do you have any idea how much I've been searching for you?
Alex was clearly furious. His breath was heavy, and his eyes, bloodshot and glaring, seemed to curse me with every look. As soon as we entered the room, he approached me with heavy footsteps. Then, standing right in front of me, he aggressively grabbed my wrist.
Let go! I told you on the phone, didn't I? I'll contact you when I've calmed down.
Is there anything more important to you than my dad and mom?
Do you realize how lonely you've made them feel by not being there?
Lonely? They were talking behind my back, and yet he dares to complain. I trembled with anger. I wished I could shut him up right there and hurl at him the worst insults I could think of. But I was too agitated to articulate my thoughts properly, so all I could do was grit my teeth and glare at Alex. Taking advantage of my silence, Alex continued.
Pour them, right? Even now, they're hungry because there's no food at home. Forget work today. You should just go back home.
Don't you dare tell me what to do with my work. You're not a child, and caregiving doesn't mean you can't move. It's about time you stopped being so dependent. I shook off Alex's hand and yelled.
I have an important meeting later today. There's no way I can just take off. And if it's so important, you should take a day off and go yourself.
There was no need for me to sacrifice so much for such people. Throwing away important work for them? Alex probably never expected me to fight back. He staggered back, surprised.
You're talking back to me. A wife's place is too.
I've been thinking, your values are skewed. What do you mean a wife's place? They're your parents, aren't they? Shouldn't you be taking care of them instead of pushing it onto someone else? Indeed, Alex's work today was supposed to be just preparing documents and meetings in the office. The document preparation could be rescheduled, and the meetings could be rearranged if he asked others, without causing much inconvenience. If Brittany was so important, he should be the one to take time off. If he won't, it shows how little they matter to him. Yet he dares to blame and try to control me. Such a convenient mama's boy. Disgusting.
What? That's ridiculous. Why should I, the husband, have to bow my head and skip work just to clean up after my wife?
Clean up what exactly?
It's time to make things clear. Listen up. Taking care of my parents is your job as my wife. If you can't do that, you're worthless as a wife.
Alex launched into a tirade, puffing up his chest with rough breaths, as if trying to intimidate me. Was he trying to scare me? He seemed like some playground bully. Not scary at all. What even is the value of a wife? Why do I have to be evaluated? So, what exactly do you want from me? I asked, my voice laced with a sigh. Alex snorted derisively. Taking care of Dad and Mom is all on you, my dear wife. If you oppose, I'll divorce you and sue for alimony, huh? Could he seriously believe such an absurd demand would fly? I looked at Alex, utterly dumbfounded, but there he was, standing tall and proud, giving me a nasty smirk. He must think I'd comply with his demand after becoming attached to Brittany. Indeed, I had been accommodating to the in-laws, thinking it was for the best. Regardless of Alex, I thought those two were good people. But now, having seen Brittany's true colors, I couldn't care less, let alone feel any sympathy. I smiled back at Alex. All right then. Let's get a divorce.
Huh?
Alex sounded completely taken aback.
Do you even understand what you're saying?
Yes. I can't be the wife you want. So, let's get a divorce, shall we? If you want to sue for alimony, go ahead. Whether you'll get it is another matter, though. I pulled out the divorce papers from my bag and handed them to Georgina. I had been keeping them on hand ever since I considered divorce.
Are you serious? Do you realize what you're doing?
Yes. Please, sign them quickly. Alex froze, seemingly in disbelief. Seeing his hesitation, I said, "Oh, you're not divorcing? Just talk, then?" Which made him furiously scribble his signature on the papers. After reviewing the signed document, everything was in order. I immediately handed it over to my secretary to file. Well, we're strangers now. As I stated matter-of-factly, Alex spat out.
You'll regret this. Talking back to your husband, what a failure of a wife. Good riddance. Choosing your job over Dad and Mom. Unbelievable.
Oh, my apologies for that.
Exactly. Even if I lost my job, I'd prioritize Dad and Mom. I'm not heartless like you.
Alex said this with too much pride. Then why didn't he take time off now? Instead of pushing it onto me, he should just take a break and help out his parents. Blaming me while he just complains is just passing the buck.
From now on, even if we see each other at work, don't talk to me. I should have chosen a different company.
Alex's parting shot pushed me to my limit. Then you're fired. I believe it was the coldest voice I've ever used. Alex stopped in his tracks and turned around and puzzled.
Huh?
Dismissed? You're not my boss. Have you gone mad from the divorce shock? Alex laughed, perhaps thinking it was a joke. I sighed softly and fixed my gaze on Georgina. When our eyes met, Alex flinched, looking at me, anxiously, bracing for what was to come. I inhaled deeply and spoke calmly.
The funny one is you. You don't even recognize the face of your own company's president?
Huh? No, that can't be. Alex's mouth twitched as he pulled out his smartphone and started searching. As he stared at the screen, the color drained from his face. He must have finally realized who I was.
You're the president of this company?
Finally caught on, have you? Alex knelt down and bowed his head to me, his voice trembling pitifully.
It's not like that, Ren. I didn't know.
Not know? No, you chose not to know, didn't you? I never brought it up, but there were plenty of opportunities for him to find out. A simple search on his phone would have revealed my name, if not my photo. It was typical of Alex. He probably never had any interest. A man without particular concern for the content of his work, focusing solely on income and time off. That's why his work performance has always been subpar. To you, I was merely an afterthought, wasn't I? What you and your parents truly desired was a diligent, hardworking wife. Someone to take care of them, anyone would do, right? Alex, mouth agape, shook his head, his face turning a ghastly shade of pale.
Not at all. Had I known you were the president, I would never have expected you to shoulder the caregiving. I would have taken care of Dad and Mom myself, allowing you to concentrate on your work. With sufficient funds, one could easily hire assistants. You'd have me earn while outsourcing caregiving to professionals, and you'd merely enjoy life, right?
Alex, with a faint smile, whispered, I wouldn't do something so terrible. Indeed, had Alex navigated things more adeptly, such a future might have been attainable. Had he proposed this before I discovered his parents' true nature, I would have agreed without hesitation. I'll earn so you can dedicate yourself to caregiving. I believe he would have sincerely said that. If Alex and his parents not shown their true colors after marriage, such a future could have been plausible. He squandered that opportunity by his own doing. Alex looked up at me, eyes seemingly moist, with a plea.
Please, Ren! Can't we start over? We had good times, didn't we? Let's visit all those places again.
True, you always took me to places I never knew. Every place you took me was indeed fun. A glimmer of hope shone in Alex's face.
Right? So, if that's the case.
However, that was merely you donning a mask to get married. Life with you post-marriage was profoundly disappointing. That is. I wonder if the divorce papers have been processed by now. Well, I must prepare for a meeting. Regarding the dismissal, I'll contact you later. You may leave for today. I packed my belongings, waved flippantly at Alex, and reached for the door. But before I could open it, Alex grasped my left hand. Turning around, I faced Alex's glare. I glared back and simply asked,
Anything else?
Anything else?
This isn't over. Suddenly deciding on a divorce, then revealing you're the president, and now a dismissal. I can't just accept this. It's all too arbitrary on your part.
The divorce was initiated by you.
You didn't expect me to agree to it. Moreover, you should have properly informed me that you were the president.
It appears Alex had planned to use the divorce as leverage to control me. The revelation of my presidency must have been a shock to him. Blaming others and shirking responsibility onto his wife. Such actions are unbecoming of an adult. It's absurd that I had to set everything up for him, yet he never questioned it. He's always lived by blaming others. I'm at a loss for words from sheer disbelief. Alex is grinding his back teeth, seemingly regretting letting go of his financial support, but that's not my concern. Isn't that too self-serving? Blaming me for your lack of planning and ignorance isn't fair, I said, causing Alex's face to flush red as he yelled back in a strained voice.
Coward! How can the president of such a large company justify firing an employee for personal gain? That's unacceptable. Such tyranny won't be tolerated.
Alex postured as if he had the moral high ground. His thinking is too immature. Always believing he's in the right. Can he not comprehend what's been said? I couldn't help but hold my head in my hands. Seeing me like this, Alex, thinking he had won, smirked triumphantly.
See? I hit the nail on the head. Should I bring this to light? You'd be the one in trouble.
I'm astounded by your foolishness. If it comes out, you're the one who'll suffer. What are you talking about? I cut Alex off, listing names. General Affairs Hoyt, Sales Gracelyn, Winter, and Accounting's Paisley. Who else was there? When I asked Alex, he began sweating profusely and looking away. What? What are you talking about? You know very well. I just named female employees you've been persistently harassing. They've come to me seeking help. Most employees don't know Alex is my husband. Only my secretary is aware. Among them, I received complaints like, "I'm troubled by the constant invitations from sales Alex." At first, I doubted my ears. My own husband was hitting on multiple young female employees. And despite their rejections, he kept coming back. I was mortified and apologetic beyond words.
I was just trying to foster camaraderie among employees,
Alex defended. By specifically targeting women over a decade younger than you? And inviting them to hotels? What kind of camaraderie were you trying to build? There were messages sent from Alex to these women, undeniable proof. No matter what Alex said, there was no escaping it. You're not only underperforming, but you're also a nuisance to others. It's my job as president to remove those who are detrimental to the company, isn't it? But that's right. And from accounting, there's a report that you might be fudging expenses. What about that? Surely, you wouldn't stoop so low, would you? Alex averted his eyes and fell silent. Regrettably, it seems that was true as well. A mama's boy, a womanizer, and on top of that, a miser. Moreover, to think he caused trouble not just for me but for others too, it's disappointing not just as a husband but as a person. I'm disillusioned by my lack of judgment in not seeing him for what he was. Feeling inept for not having seen through such a person. I'll make sure all suspicions are cleared up before proceeding with the dismissal, so rest assured. Well, I'm leaving now. You better get along with your parents back home. Alex collapsed on the spot. Slumped over, muttering something under his breath. He must have realized it was all too late. Even as I reached for the door, Alex, now devoid of energy, didn't say anything more, and I left the room. Upon further investigation, all suspicions against Alex were confirmed. After making Alex apologize to the affected female employees, he resigned voluntarily, taking responsibility. Now jobless, Alex returned to live with his parents at home. A while later, he attempted to start working again part-time, but then something unexpected happened to Alex. Until now, though former Rosalind needed care, former Brittany was essentially able to manage daily tasks on her own. Thanks to this, Alex only had to help out occasionally. However, former Brittany has recently started showing signs of dementia, including instances of wandering at night. A father who physically requires care and a mother who is usually fine but occasionally shows symptoms of dementia.
I just can't find peace anymore. We're running out of money too. Please help.
I received a plea for help from Alex, indicating he was at his limit. If our divorce had been amicable and there were no hard feelings towards my former in-laws, I might have been inclined to help. But these were the people who had looked down on me as nothing more than a caregiver. There's no room for sympathy. It sounds tough, but I'm afraid I cannot offer any assistance. Furthermore, as we are now strangers, I kindly ask that you refrain from contacting me further. Depending on the situation, I may have to take appropriate actions. After conveying this, I no longer received any messages from Alex. After divorcing Alex, I had decided I was done with marriage and resolved to live alone. However, just when I had settled on this, someone I had known for many years through work confessed his feelings to me. The trauma from Alex made me consider declining, but knowing this person's sincerity from our long acquaintance, I gratefully accepted the offer to start dating. Whether this will lead to marriage, I'm uncertain, and part of me doubts, fearing a change post-marriage, but this person is the most gentle individual I've ever met. Moreover, since he is also a business owner, we can share and understand each other's work. Unlike with Alex, he truly feels like a partner should. If I can spend the future with him, this happiness I feel now will surely continue. Hoping for such a future, I continue to work hard today.
Stay away from the graduation, okay? If a dull woman like you shows up, you'll be the laughingstock of everyone. It's my moment to shine. Don't you dare come. I felt dizzy at Renly's words about becoming the laughingstock of everyone. It was clear now, Renly didn't consider me family. To Renly, I was just an embarrassment. Hey, where are you right now? The moment I pressed the call button, Renly's grating voice pierced my ears. Renly's tone was fast, laced with panic. It seemed she was in a state of panic. Leaving a note like that? Do you think it's okay? Where are you? Come back right now. I could also hear Oliver's voice. Both of them were frantically worried. My name is Evelyn, a 39-year-old housewife. While working part-time in a local real estate office, I've been taking care of our daughter Renly and managing the household chores for over a decade. I married Oliver 12 years ago. Oliver had a daughter, Renly, from his previous marriage. I met Oliver at the workplace where I worked before we got married. At that time, I was working at a construction company, and Oliver used to come there for sales. Our company was strict with its clients, but I was always impressed by Oliver, who came to sell with a smile. I once recommended Oliver's products to my company. I wanted to be of help to Oliver. As a result, Oliver's company was chosen. That led to us going out for meals several times, getting into a serious relationship, and him proposing. I happily accepted his proposal and started preparing for the wedding after resigning from my job. When the wedding was just around the corner, Oliver revealed that he was living alone with his 6-year-old daughter. At first, I thought it was a lie. It wasn't something I could believe immediately, but the story was true. I met Renly a week before the wedding. Renly, perhaps shy, hid behind Oliver and didn't come out in front of me. That's when I made up my mind. For Renly, let's live together. I decided to make Renly a respectable adult. Until high school graduation, I'll properly take care of Renly. I didn't fully understand why I thought so, but I couldn't forget the anxious look peeking out from under Renly. Having made up my mind, I decided to marry Oliver. It was my first marriage, and my family, especially my father, Anthony, strongly opposed it, calling it foolish and nonsensical. Despite their objections, I went ahead with the marriage. If only I had listened to my parents then, I might have avoided the ordeal that was about to begin. Now, 12 years into this marriage, Renly has turned 18. She's about to graduate from high school this year. It should be a moment of joy, but I couldn't bring myself to feel happy. The thought I had when I decided to marry, to raise her to be a respectable adult, kept crossing my mind. Hey, where's my t-shirt? Where did you put it? Don't tell me you stole it. Just 2 years after we started living together, Renly began to treat me harshly. She used to be kind in the beginning. Even though she was getting used to me, one day she started hurling abuse and became rough in her behavior. Is this the t-shirt you're looking for? I pulled it out from the laundry I was folding and handed it to Renly. Why did you wash this? What if it shrinks? You're supposed to dry clean it, aren't you? You're so clueless. Seriously, so clumsy. I had hand washed and air dried the t-shirt, thinking the fabric might get damaged at the dry cleaners. But I couldn't say that to Renly, and all I could respond with was, "I'm sorry." Renly snatched it from my hands, and leaving behind a cutting remark, "You're really useless," she walked away. Her words were sharp, piercing through my heart. I couldn't retort, only bowing my head. I couldn't understand why Renly had become so rough towards me. Initially, I thought she was being teased about her father's remarriage, but it seemed that wasn't the case. Around the same time, Oliver's attitude began to change. He used to be as smiley as when he was doing sales, but recently he stopped smiling at home and often seemed grumpy. And he started being harsh towards me. As if mirroring Oliver's behavior, Renly's attitude towards me also changed. I thought maybe I was lacking in some way, so I made sure not to slack off with the household chores and kept a close watch on Renly. I wanted her to grow up to be a respectable adult. But contrary to my wishes, Renly's attitude only got worse day by day. She stopped saying thank you to me. What was strange was during parent-teacher meetings in elementary school, the teachers said Renly's behavior in class was normal, and she wasn't rough at all. Oliver, too, seemed to talk to Renly normally. Sometimes he even showed a smile. So it seemed that this terrible attitude was reserved only for me. And that realization hurt me even more. I couldn't even discuss it with Oliver. He had become distant and a completely different person from before. I had no one to turn to. With a heavy and dark weight in my heart, I continued with my life, becoming increasingly isolated within my home. My isolation in the house only got worse. After middle school, Renly stopped sharing anything about school with me, and Oliver was the only one attending all the events. I would find out about sports days and cultural festivals from the neighbors. Oliver and Renly seemed to be getting along well, often going out together. I too wanted to be treated as family by Oliver and Renly. I had always hoped we would live together happily. But the reality that this wish would never be fulfilled was unbearably painful. And Oliver's behavior towards me kept growing worse.
"Dust is piling up on the stairs. Clean it up. You're the housewife, aren't you? We're running low on toilet paper. Are you even cleaning the bathroom? And you're really clumsy."
I would often receive such remarks from Oliver. Initially, when we got married, he shared household chores. Oliver, who had been living with Renly, used to do housework. He was initially happy that we could share the household chores, but now I was the one doing all the work. Even though Oliver used to say it was absurd for the housewife to do all the chores. Though Renly was an easy child, it somehow worked against me, making me feel inadequate and depressed. When I tried discussing it with Oliver, he would dismiss it, saying,
"You're not trying hard enough."
It was always somehow my fault. So the more I tried to discuss it with Oliver, the heavier the gloom in my heart became. He would nitpick on my household mishaps, nagging and blaming me.
"You can't even clean properly. Haven't you learned anything after all these years? Do you lack the ability to learn?"
Oliver would look down on me with disdain. All I could do was apologize. I'm sorry, I'll try harder. Please forgive me." Oliver would sigh exaggeratedly, as if it was all too much.
"Trying hard doesn't mean you can do it. That's why you're always getting scolded. You always say you'll do it, but have you ever actually accomplished anything?"
Oliver's words kept chipping away at my heart. As time passed, my heart grew weary, and Renly turned 18. I was curious about Renly's future plans, but she wouldn't tell me, and Oliver wouldn't talk about it either. By this time, I had stopped talking to Oliver and Renly about anything but absolutely necessary matters. I happened to overhear Renly and Oliver talking about our future plans after graduation. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I wanted to know, so I stopped and listened until the end.
It's settled. I got into college with a recommendation, and I even got a scholarship. It's all thanks to you, Dad. Thank you.
Renly's happy voice was something she would never use with me.
That's great. It's all the result of your hard work. All those chores we dumped on that clumsy housekeeper paid off.
I couldn't believe it. Was the housekeeper they were referring to me?
Yeah, it was a good outlet for my stress.
Their scornful laughter reached my ears. I quietly left the spot and locked myself in the bathroom. It was the only place I could be alone. Crouched in the bathroom, I held my head and let the tears flow. To be thought of in such a way by Oliver and Renly, I'd endured the last 10 years. No matter how close my heart came to breaking, I continued being Renly's mother and Oliver's wife. Even when my heart screamed out in agony and felt at its limit, I somehow managed to persevere. There were times I felt I couldn't get up, but I forced myself to, preparing lunches, making breakfast, and managing household chores like laundry and cleaning. Truth be told, I wanted to just lie down and never get up. But if I did that, I feared I would never be needed by Oliver and Renly again. That fear kept me going. I spent my days in exhaustion. Honestly, I barely remember that time. One day after going shopping, a neighbor told me something shocking. Tomorrow was Renly's high school graduation. Unable to admit I didn't know, I just smiled vaguely and left. As soon as I got home, I collapsed onto the sofa. I had always thought of raising Renly to be a respectable adult. High school graduation was supposed to be a milestone in that process. Yet again, I was the one left out. In this house, I was forbidden from having a mobile phone or using a computer. All I had was an old cell phone that could only make calls. All communication with the school was handled by Oliver, so I didn't even have what you'd call mom friends. I had absolutely no way to get information about the school. Still, I learned about sports days and concerts from neighbors or children's conversations after school, and secretly attended. I wanted to properly attend the high school graduation and celebrate Renly's transition into adulthood. While I was crying on the sofa, Renly returned from school.
What are you doing slumped there? It's so dark. You're making the whole house gloomy. Can't you do something about it?
Renly glared at me, even though it was Renly's fault. If Renly had told me the date of her graduation, I wouldn't feel like this. For the first time, I felt anger slowly rising from the depths of my heart. So, I hear your graduation is tomorrow. You didn't bother to tell me, though. I was about to say this, placing my words with a sense of blame. Renly seemed suddenly taken aback to my defiant words, but then she exaggeratedly sighed, as if to cover it up.
So what? You're not coming to the graduation anyway, so why does the date matter?
I responded to Renly's words by tilting my head in feigned confusion. I never said I wasn't going to the graduation.
Don't come. If a drab woman like you shows up, you'll be the laughingstock of everyone. It's my moment to shine. Don't you dare come.
I felt dizzy at Renly's words about becoming the laughingstock of everyone. Indeed, Renly didn't consider me family. To Renly, I was just an embarrassment. I had hoped this time would be different, but it seems forgiveness was out of reach. Renly's words "don't come" pierced my heart. It was clear that from her own mouth that I was nothing but an intruder. That night, Oliver came home holding a suit in a dry cleaner's bag. He had taken the suit to the cleaners himself without asking me. It was obvious he knew about Renly's graduation ceremony. When I looked at the suit,
Yeah, I guess Renly didn't tell you.
Oliver said it with a mocking, pitying look. It was confirmed I was the least needed in this house. I was the only one who thought of us as a family. At that moment, I realized my heart had already surpassed its limit. So I decided to end my role in this family. The next day, Oliver and Renly went to the graduation ceremony together. I was left behind. And
we'll eat out tonight, so no need to prepare dinner.
Oliver even said I wasn't invited. The old me might have forgiven even this treatment, but those days were over today. I decided to leave the house last night. Once they left, I quickly packed my bags, left a note, and left the house. I could no longer be a family with Oliver and Renly. I decided to seek refuge at my parents' house, about 2 hours away by train. There, I would start the process of cutting ties with Oliver and Renly. The note I left stated my intention to sever our family ties, live alone, and that detailed discussion should be made through a lawyer. Although I hadn't found a lawyer yet, I knew Anthony could recommend one. My family home belongs to a lineage of landowners and is well known in the area. Anthony, owning considerable real estate, was a well-known figure. He surely had lawyers in his social circle. I remembered meeting a lawyer during a New Year's Eve greeting at my family home. Another task was selling the house where Oliver and Renly were living. That house, on land owned by Anthony, was built with money he gave as a wedding gift. I had been slowly repaying Anthony with the money I earned from my real estate part-time job, which was also through Anthony's referral. The house, both the building and the land, belonged to Anthony. It was in his name. At the time, Oliver, perhaps thinking the house was a gift, never inquired about the ownership. Probably he was afraid to upset Anthony and lose the gift. Oliver always tried to appear superior in front of those close to him, acting tough towards those he deemed below him, while ingratiating himself with those above. I recounted all this to Anthony, tears streaming down my face. I sobbed uncontrollably, pausing my story many times, but Anthony listened till the end. Tears welled up in his eyes too. What made me happy was that Anthony didn't criticize my decision back then. He simply said,
"You've had a hard time."
Then, Anthony made several phone calls, and lawyers and real estate agents started coming to the house. Everything happened quickly after that. It was decided that the house would be demolished. The demolition was scheduled for a week later. The note said, "Please leave within a week." Anthony remarked sarcastically,
"That's quite generous of you."
I just didn't want them to complain later. A week passed as I consulted with the lawyer about the divorce. I shared everything with my mother, Zayla, and we cried together. One moment, Zayla's face turned frighteningly stern, a look I still can't forget. I discussed my future plans with Anthony. Above all, I needed to establish a stable life foundation. It took courage to talk to my parents, and though it was painful, speaking up lightened my heart, allowing me to sleep soundly for the first time in 10 years. A week later, living relatively peacefully at my parents' home, my mobile phone rang. As expected, it was Renly. To be honest, I didn't want to talk. The memories of our past treatment darkened my heart. I decided to ignore the call. However, the calls persisted, increasingly from Oliver as well. They were probably contacting me about the note I left. Maybe they had been informed by the demolition company. Oliver and Renly for 10 years subjected me to verbal abuse and exploitation, an unacceptable treatment for a family. The thought of dealing with them again made me shudder. But I couldn't continue like this. I needed to settle the past properly to move forward. Plus, running away without facing them wouldn't give me closure. After enduring their appalling treatment, it was time for Oliver and Renly to get their due. I braced myself and answered the phone, Hey, where are you right now? As soon as I pressed the talk button, Renly's irritating voice pierced my ears. Her tone was rapid, clearly panicked.
Leaving such a ridiculous note. You think you'll get away with this? Where are you?
Come back right now. Oliver's voice was also audible. Both were in a frenzy. I imagined Renly returning from the graduation ceremony, returning to find that their stress relief servant had vanished, and a note demanding divorce and evacuation of the house. Anyone would panic, especially on the day of her graduation. I couldn't help but let out a smile at Renly's desperation. Who is this? Renly stuttered at my unexpected response. I hung up the phone. Then, I called the property management company to confirm the demolition date. It was scheduled for tomorrow as planned, and Oliver had been informed. I requested the demolition be posted by a day and asked them to inform Oliver about the delay. A day of grace was given. Oliver would probably come here. That's when I would deliver my retribution to Oliver and Renly. Despite dozens of calls from them, I ignored them all. The next day around noon, I heard the entrance doorbell ring and the sound of knocking. Ding ding! It must be Oliver and Renly. They probably wanted to come earlier, but bad connections could make the journey immensely long. They seemed breathless, undoubtedly in a hurry. I had arranged with Anthony and Zayla to stay in a separate room, so it appeared I was the only one at home. I led Oliver and Renly to the living room. Oliver entered timidly. He was always uncomfortable around my father, Anthony. Anthony, a well-known and respected figure in town, certainly had a presence. To Oliver, he was someone superior. Renly, on the other hand, wasn't intimidated. She seemed determined to overpower me and take me back. Renly lounged in the living room chair, crossing her legs. She silently gestured for me to sit opposite her while crossing her arms. I leisurely prepared coffee, taking my time before sitting across from her. Renly, seeming impatient, addressed me. What's the meaning of this? Oliver, sitting beside her, placed my note on the table. I stared at Renly silently without reacting. Renly averted her eyes, trying to dispel the awkwardness with a laugh. What was that? Who is this? Yesterday? Your acting was pretty bad. I continued to silently gaze at Renly. She squirmed under my stare, continuing uncomfortably. Look, it's useless. You can't make it without us. You're nothing but trash. I almost reacted to Renly's harsh words, but restrained myself, noticing the tremor in her voice. She must be putting up a strong front. Throughout this, Oliver remained silent, seemingly watching how things would unfold. Stop being stubborn and come back. Renly was trying to disorient and drag me back home with her vile words. The more agitated Renly became, the calmer I responded. I don't have a family, do I? Well, I have parents, but you two are not my family, right? Renly, probably feeling cornered, raised her voice. What are you talking about? Dad and I are your family, right, Dad? Renly, sensing she was at a disadvantage alone, started seeking Oliver's support. Oliver looked around, ensuring no one else was present, and then spoke to me with a sense of relief.
That's right, you can't live without us, just like Renly said, so you're coming back.
Oliver suddenly became assertive, realizing my parents were not around. Looking back, I marvel at his lack of courage. Therefore, I have no family, I answered firmly. No matter what Oliver and Renly said, I would continue to treat them as strangers. They were not my family. If they were, they wouldn't have treated me like a slave. A family supports and helps each other, standing by one another in times of trouble. But Oliver and Renly were different. For a decade, they treated me as a servant, a vent for their stress. They insisted it was normal, oblivious to how wrong and atrocious it was. Unaware, they oppressed me. I'm impressed I endured it for 10 years. I commend myself. It all started with the look in Renly's eyes when I first met her. Bound by the words I imposed on myself to raise Renly into a respectable adult. For this, I tirelessly served Oliver and Renly. That's why I endured until high school graduation. I decided that once Renly graduated high school and became independent, it would be time to draw the line with her and Oliver. Until then, I harbored a faint hope that Oliver and Renly might have a change of heart and treat me differently, and if so, I was willing to continue as a family. But of course, Oliver and Renly shattered my expectations, leading to this situation. Everything was decided by their behavior the day before the graduation. That's why I'm now confronting them with the appropriate attitude. Oliver and Renly are no longer my family. That's why I won't treat them as such. Perhaps realizing the significance of my treating them as strangers, Renly shifted her approach. We're family, right, Mom? Stop with the unconvincing act. She suddenly started calling me Mom. It seems Renly has begun to realize things won't be as they were. Oliver, too, watched nervously as Renly and I interacted. You're not my birth mother, but we've lived together for a long time, so please listen to my request. Renly unfolded her arms and clasped her hands together in front of her, leaning forward from her previously arrogant posture. I don't recall owing a favor to someone who's not family. I responded coldly, suppressing my emotions. Tears appeared in Renly's eyes. She pleaded with a desperate look. Please listen to me. That note you left was a lie, right? You're not really selling the house, are you? That can't be true, because you're part of our family. The way Renly referred to me as Mom was nauseating. And what concerned her was the house. She was anxious about losing the house, though it's true the house will be gone. Is that really what concerns her? It seems that for her, having a place to live is all that matters, regardless of my presence. No matter how much Renly begs, my mind won't change. Renly finally bowed her head, apparently crying. What kind of joke is this? Stop with the insolent attitude now. Perhaps rattled by Renly's tears, Oliver directed aggressive words at me. What's this note about? Come back and stop the demolition now. Oliver, driven by anger, spoke rapidly. That's not possible. It's already decided. I continued to respond with suppressed emotion. You think you can do this to your family and get away with it? That's why I keep saying you're not my family. Neither Oliver nor Renly seems to listen at all. Please stop. Haven't I made it clear? You're not my family. How many times do I have to repeat the same words? Suddenly, Oliver stood up and slammed his fist on the table. Stop messing around. I was so startled, but managed to suppress any reaction. Who's really messing around? After not treating me as family for 10 years, you can't just expect me to act like one now, can you? I spoke more sharply than intended. Anger was welling up inside me. It wasn't visible in my actions, but the rage from deep within was threatening to erupt. I couldn't tolerate Oliver and Renly's selfish actions. They trampled on my decade of hellish suffering and my efforts to overcome it. I had tried to become a family with Oliver and Renly, but they rejected it, mocked it, and exploited it. They will never understand how lonely and painful it was to be ostracized. Despite my repeated wishes to be treated as family, my hopes were never realized. It took me 10 years to give up. Despite my continued efforts to build a relationship with Renly as her mother, it all led to this result. A self-deprecating smile crossed my face. And seeing my dry smile, Oliver and Renly stared at me in shock. Oliver seemed to lose his strength and slumped into his chair. These two, instead of understanding my feelings, tried to use me until the very end. No matter how much I cared for Oliver and Renly, they never cared for me. Even though I valued them, they never valued me. And now, finding themselves in a tight spot, they resorted to using me again. spouting family bonds they never believed in. It was all too convenient. I felt not just a headache, but nausea. Why did I tolerate them for 10 years? Looking back, it's a mystery. But dwelling on it now is pointless. There's no future for me, Oliver and Renly together. All I can do is make Oliver and Renly acknowledge their wrongdoings and pay for them. I expect and trust nothing from Renly or Oliver anymore. Oliver stood up, knelt on the floor, and bowed his head.
I'm sorry. Please come back. I beg you.
Even with his head bowed, it made no impact on me. I won't extend a helping hand or consider living together again. Enough already. I'm no longer your family. I'm a stranger to you. Renly, following Oliver's lead, started apologizing deeply. I'm sorry. Please forgive us. We're family, so I want to go back together. Their arbitrary statements left me dumbfounded. After treating me like a stranger for 10 years, you now say, come back because we're family. Did you really think I'd say yes? You're taking me too lightly. I felt I was losing my calm composure. Carried by momentum, words just spilled out of me. Words I would never have said before began to spill out. Harsh words I had kept to myself out of consideration for Oliver and Renly. I don't want to hear your excuses. I can't trust any of your words. I can never think of us as family again. I placed a document in front of Oliver. It was the divorce papers, already signed by me. Fill out the divorce papers now. I'll take them myself. Write them right here. Oliver shook his head in denial, then showed me a smile.
Think it over, all right?
I was astonished by his persistence. Such a cowardly man. I had always misinterpreted Oliver's ingratiating smile. The smile he showed when we first met was a sly expression he used when assessing someone, and I had mistaken it for kindness. The thought still infuriates me. I stood up and called for Anthony and Zayla from the back. Anthony and Zayla appeared in the living room. Oliver opened his mouth wide in shock.
Anthony.
Anthony glared sharply at Oliver. Zayla also had a stern look on her face. Just being glared at, Oliver cowered.
I'm terribly sorry.
Oliver bowed deeply, making Renly bow as well.
We're sorry for the trouble Evelyn's mishap has caused Anthony and Zayla.
I thought I had misheard. My mishap? Is Oliver still trying to shift all the blame even now? Anthony looked perplexed, but remained silent.
Evelyn just left home on her own. We were only trying to persuade her to come back. Isn't that right, Renly?
Oliver was pressuring Renly to agree with his fabricated story.
Evelyn's misbehavior. Don't joke with me.
Anthony's booming voice echoed throughout the house. Oliver and Renly barely uttered a word, intimidated. Anthony stood in front of Oliver, leaned down to meet his gaze.
How can you interpret Evelyn's actions as selfish? You only think about yourself. You're truly a pitiful man.
Then Anthony turned to Renly.
You two, following this man, have done some terrible things. What did you think of Evelyn, you foolish girl?
Again, Anthony's loud voice reverberated. Renly was visibly trembling, probably out of fear. Anthony stood up and glared at them menacingly.
Renly, you've been causing trouble at school, too. I've been informed.
Indeed, through a detective acquaintance of Anthony, it was discovered that Renly had been extorting money from a fellow female student at school. The victimized student, too scared to confide in anyone, was now under Anthony's support, preparing for a criminal complaint. Renly, who looked down on me, was doing the same at school. Renly exclaimed, "Lies!" and widened her eyes. "Did that person rat on me?" It seemed I was witnessing Renly's true nature. Absolutely no remorse. She's only thinking about getting out of this situation.
And you, Oliver, you've been embezzling company funds.
This was also uncovered by the detective's investigation. Oliver had been fabricating business trips. I had hired the detective to bolster my divorce case, but they unearthed some shocking facts about the two.
Why? How could you know that? Was it that person?
Oliver reacted just like Renly. No remorse, too stubborn. Punishment from me alone won't suffice. They must face societal repercussions too. Zayla then spoke up. Well, this conversation is over. Please sign the divorce papers and leave this house as soon as possible. Oliver, while shedding tears, muttered, I don't want to, but seemed to resign himself after Anthony forced a pen into his hand. He sat down and signed the divorce papers. I glanced at the clock. It was almost 7 p.m. The last train was at 7:30 p.m. Missing it meant no trains until the next morning. In a small town like this, there are no taxis. If Oliver and Renly miss the last train, they won't make it in time for the demolition tomorrow. They probably didn't pack anything, thinking they could persuade me. As I was pondering whether to inform them, Renly suddenly adopted a defiant attitude and said something unbelievable. But you initiated this divorce. Dad, you should get alimony from the divorce court. Had Renly become defiant after being exposed? Anthony and Zayla looked shocked. It's impossible. What you've done is essentially domestic violence, a crime. Renly, momentarily taken aback, but still defiant. Prove it then, she retorted. I placed a journal on the table. This is the diary I started writing since I got married. Renly glared at me with disdain. How could you have any proof without a mobile phone or computer? You seem unaware that a diary can be significant evidence. Evidence isn't limited to videos, audio, or photos. Renly was visibly stunned.
That's right. Even the lawyers acknowledged it. This diary is substantial evidence.
Oliver and Renly seemed resigned, their heads drooping. I exaggeratedly checked my watch. The last train is left. You won't be able to return home today. Zayla also looked at Oliver and Renly with a composed face. That's true. There are no taxis around here, and I wonder if there's even a decent hotel.
Now that we're done here, please leave immediately.
Oliver and Renly were ushered out like they were being chased away. They probably couldn't believe the last train left so early. Their hurried figures were visible from the second-floor balcony as they headed to the station. Watching their flustered departure, the weight in my heart dissipated. Some cleanup remained, but it felt like it was over. Missing the last train, Oliver and Renly couldn't find a taxi and ended up walking about an hour to a hotel. The next day, they managed to salvage only their clothes from the house, which was undergoing demolition. Actually, the contents of the house, including furniture, appliances, and my belongings, were temporarily stored in a warehouse, but I didn't tell Oliver and Renly. Later, the lawyer informed me that the divorce was finalized, including the settlement for compensation from the divorce court. Oliver was reluctant to pay, but pressure was applied to his company, and he agreed to the payment. Based on the detective's report, Oliver was fired for embezzlement. Renly, involved in a police case, was expelled from high school, let alone going to university. Jobless Oliver could only rent an old, cramped apartment far from the station. There he lived with Renly, who had dropped out of high school. Renly shifted all the blame to Oliver, and they constantly fought, as the detective reported. Having quit my part-time job at the real estate, I was contemplating my next move. When Anthony suggested I help with the family business and employed me in his resort property management company. The resort setting is a big change from city life, surrounded by nature, providing a refreshing change of scenery. I also started keeping a dog, so I don't feel lonely living alone. For now, this dog is all the family I need. I'm planning to live leisurely, just me and my dog.
Low-educated women are practically strangers. The girl brought home by my eldest son was a young lady who grew up in a family that excessively valued educational background. Apparently, a high school dropout mother is not needed. I wasn't invited to the wedding ceremony, nor was I informed about their new home. As I grieved over being separated from my son, a resume arrived for me. My name is Susanna Wisdom. I turned 55 this year. My husband passed away 5 years ago, and now I live with my eldest son. We've always been a dual-income family, but now I've taken over my husband's job. I have 2 sons, Adolf and Theo. My eldest, Adolf, still lives at home, while Theo went abroad for university and continued there for graduate studies. Recently, Adolf got a girlfriend and seems to be planning to introduce her to me soon. If she becomes Adolf's wife, I have fulfilled my responsibility. I hope they could live with me since there's spare room, but I can't decide this alone as his wife's opinion matters too. Adolf announced on Friday night that he's bringing his girlfriend home this Sunday. I wish you'd told me something this important sooner. Adolf scratched his head at my words. He had wanted to introduce me earlier, but she seemed hesitant, and Sunday's plan was made abruptly. Adolf chuckled helplessly about her whimsical nature. I don't want to upset him further, so I compromised. I'm just glad that I don't have urgent work on Sunday. All right, Sunday it is. Let me know the time when you find out. When I said this, okay, Adolf nodded. I looked up, feeling his gaze on me. Anxiety was written all over his face. Is there anything else worrying you? With difficulty. I have a favor to ask, Adolf began. His serious tone made me brace myself. I feared it might be a shotgun marriage. Please don't mention your education or past to her. I relaxed a bit, but then pondered. Could my background cause a problem? Is there a reason? It might sound strange, but Adolf sighed softly and explained. It seems his girlfriend comes from a family that overly emphasizes educational background. Adolf, being a graduate of a renowned state university, is considered elite, and Theo's success isn't an issue. The problem, according to Adolf, is my education. Even before they get married, I feel a little bad that it's such a hassle. It felt troublesome even before meeting her. I wanted to advise against such a woman, but I refrained. I always strive to be a generous mother. I understand. I won't bring up education or work, so bring her with confidence. Adolf smiled, relieved at my words. He seemed to care deeply about her, maybe even sees her as a potential wife. For my son, I can endure a little inconvenience. I thought this at the time. On the day of the family meeting, Adolf was restless from the morning, and it rubbed off on me. A breather came only when he went to pick her up. Just before leaving, he reminded me again about not discussing education or career history. I reassured him repeatedly. About 30 minutes later, Adolf returned with her. We exchanged greetings at the door. She was indeed doll-like in her beauty. Adolf has always preferred beautiful women since his student days. Probably love at first sight for her looks. I felt a bit embarrassed for my son. Her name is Cindy Harold. She definitely had the air of a well-bred young lady, subtle makeup and modest dress, perfect for meeting a boyfriend's mother. She even brought a cake from my favorite bakery. Far from the image I had imagined from Adolf's description, she left a great impression. We chatted over the cake she brought. Cindy laughed easily. She could make a good wife for Adolf. She plans to work after marriage and is currently job hunting in administration. Certainly, the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship will be good. Actually, we're planning to have the wedding ceremony in June, Adolf said. Cindy quietly nodded beside him. June is less than 2 months away. We've already reserved the church, Cindy explained. Really? It was natural for me to be surprised, but even Adolf seemed shocked, apparently unaware of the church reservation. Cindy had decided this with her parents. It seemed Adolf had often visited their home. So Cindy's visit to me was after everything was arranged. At the very end, while I didn't feel ignored, I thought it was logical to meet me first. Adolf had already met Cindy's parents, and I felt somewhat dissatisfied. From then on, Cindy led the conversation. Adolf was unaware of many things that came up, like the church, honeymoon destination, guests, and seating, all decided without him. Mostly reflecting Cindy and her parents' wishes, our family wasn't considered. For instance, as Adolf's brother, Theo would want to attend. I thought he could manage to return, but what if he couldn't? Also, I refrained from mentioning Adolf's workplace at his request, but I wanted to invite people who helped him get his job. I might seem old-fashioned, but I have my standing too. If she's marrying Adolf, she should give him more respect. Cindy seemed oblivious to my feelings, proudly sharing her plans. She appeared to believe her decisions were perfect, needing no input. She wasn't selfish, but very determined. Adolf would likely always be led by her. Thinking of the future made me sigh. Then the worst happened. Cindy hadn't visited since her first greeting, and no family meetings occurred. I hadn't met her parents and felt anxious as the wedding neared. When I asked Adolf about the ceremony preparations, are the preparations for the wedding ceremony underway? His vague answers gave no clarity. As the wedding date approached, he avoided me. When I asked if he had contacted Theo, he said he hadn't due to it being last minute. It's all going to be a small family ceremony. That's all Adolf told me. If it's just family, shouldn't we wait for Theo? Otherwise, I might be the only one from Adolf's side attending. I wondered if Cindy had considered this. The details of their post-marriage life were also unclear. Adolf seemed to be packing his things, probably moving out, but he never discussed a new home with me. It all seemed to be happening without my knowledge. It was a Saturday. Adolf left early, saying he had things to do. Normally, he'd sleep in on Saturdays, but he was busy. Maybe it was work-related. That's what I thought. Take care. What time will you be back? I won't be back today. I'm staying over, and I'll be away for a while starting the day after tomorrow. He said this without looking at me in a hurry. Maybe a long business trip. His job often requires them. Maybe he's more motivated since getting engaged. Okay, it's tough, but good luck. I sent him off thinking it was work. Looking back, I feel foolish. Adolf didn't return that night. He came back the next day around noon with Cindy. They both looked tired but happy. It's been a while. Was it a wedding planning meeting? I asked Cindy while serving her coffee, to which she responded with a slightly malicious smile. I was surprised. I hadn't seen her make such an expression. The wedding ceremony was completed yesterday as planned, so no more meetings needed. I was speechless at Cindy's words. The wedding had already happened. Of course, I wasn't there, nor was I invited. I had only heard from Adolf about a small family wedding a few days ago. What do you mean? You're just slow because of your low education, right? Cindy said this in a tone that seemed to reveal her true nature with a mocking smile. Listen, I've always been in famous private schools from kindergarten, elementary, junior, and high school, leading a brilliant life. I graduated from a well-known state university. Naturally, my parents are also elite state university graduates. I was born an elite. Cindy seemed very pleased with herself. You must be surprised your son married such a beautiful, high-educated lady from a top family. I was surprised once, too. What are you talking about? I heard from Adolf. You dropped out of high school. Adolf later told me that, surrounded by Cindy's relatives, he had to talk about my and Theo's education before they let him leave. So you didn't let me attend the wedding because I'm a high school dropout? My voice was surprisingly low. Cindy was unfazed, believing she was absolutely right. Low-educated women are practically strangers, she said with contempt, looking at me as if I were something dirty. Strangers have no right to attend a family-only wedding ceremony. We have no obligation to tell them where we'll live. Please cut ties with Adolf from today. I can't introduce someone with a high school dropout and their family to my friends and relatives. It's too embarrassing. Her cuteness during our first meeting seemed like a lie. I looked at Adolf, who was small and looking down. It was a close call not knowing you were a high school dropout until the end. It's good we prevented it. Cindy seemed pleased with herself as she demeaned me. Finally, she pulled Adolf's arm and left the living room. I was so shocked that I couldn't chase after them and just watch them leave. True to Cindy's words, I wasn't informed of their honeymoon destination or new home. During their honeymoon, movers came to take Adolf's things. When I asked where they were going, "We've been asked not to tell," they said awkwardly. I was so angry, I contacted my friend Shirley, who always helps in both personal and professional matters. After hearing the story, she came right away. Seeing my empty house after Adolf's things were removed, I told her everything, including not being informed of the wedding or their new address. After calmly listening, "It must have been tough, but I have thought of a way to get back at her," she said. She showed me a document and our counter-attack began. Finding their new address was surprisingly easy. A newly built condominium near Cindy's parents' house was their new home. I was surprised by her preparedness in choosing a place so close to her own home. The condominium, being new, seemed to have many newlywed tenants. "Excuse me, I'm Adolf Wisdom's mother, newly moved into this building." Actually, I introduced myself to the building manager and the coincidentally present owner, explaining my concerns about not knowing where my son was and the treatment I received from his wife. I told them everything about Cindy. The manager mentioned that Cindy was polite when the owner was around, but changed when they were alone. Once, she berated him for being late with the mail, saying, "Low-educated people are so slow, just like your mom." Adolf was there, being scolded too. The owner was surprised that his story matched mine. When I told the story of how they treated me, my now daughter-in-law, as an outsider and didn't let me attend the wedding ceremony, the owner cried with empathy. He sympathized with me, saying he would be scared if his son brought home such a bride. Currently, they're on their honeymoon. Their return from a blissful trip will likely not be as pleasant. There's been no contact from them even around the time they should have returned. Adolf seems to have changed his number, and I couldn't reach him. I told Theo the situation over the phone. He said Adolf had briefly talked to him, apparently under Cindy's control, and threatened with divorce if he contacted me. According to Theo, Cindy's attitude changed after the trip. Their newlywed life wasn't what he imagined. Cindy, initially friendly, became domineering in the neighborhood, leading to being avoided. Theo said the owner was also troubled by her sudden coldness. "Let me introduce you to our new hires." It was a typical morning meeting at the company. Shirley, the HR manager, began introducing the new employees. "This is Cindy Harold. I might be new to many things, but I'm looking forward to working with everyone." She greeted with a smile, well made up and neatly dressed, likely making a good impression on the male staff. Now a few words from our CEO. As I appeared. "What? Why are you here?" Cindy exclaimed in shock. The room tensed for a moment, but I started speaking anyway. "Nice to meet you, new employees. I am Susanna Wisdom, the CEO. Is something wrong?" "Ha, no way! She's just a high school dropout. She can't be a CEO. She's an outsider. Call the police." Cindy's privileged upbringing was evident in her assertive tone. The employees were stunned by her transformation. "So you're Cindy Harold. I've heard about you from HR." "What? What are you talking about? You have nothing to do with this. Get out of here." Ignoring her shouts, I continued. "I heard you flirted with the male HR interviewer, saying, 'Please give me the job,' and leaning in close." "What? Why are you bringing this up now?" "And then you said, 'I want the easiest job. It's ridiculous for someone with my high education to work hard,' right? If you help me, you'll be part of the elite too. As thanks, I'll introduce you to my super elite parents. You don't get such chances often." Those are the words of someone who doesn't appreciate hard work, still depending on their parents. Quite pitiful. "Stop lying, that's nonsense." Such unprofessional language. "But Miss Harold, are you okay with losing your hard-earned job offer? I heard you've been rejected by many companies." "Oh, job hunting again would be tough, wouldn't it?" "Please don't cancel my job offer, Susanna." The office buzzed at Cindy's words. The CEO's son's wife? She seems odd. Rejected everywhere because she flirted in interviews. I heard murmurs around the room. Despite needing to apologize, Cindy remained arrogant. "I apologize for not inviting you to the wedding and saying low-educated people are strangers," she started saying. "You're incredible for becoming a CEO despite dropping out of high school." I recognize you as an elite and will introduce you to my parents. Your parents? Yes, they're super elite. All my friends, too. If you forgive me, you can join us. She's supposed to be the one apologizing, so why is she being so bossy? Ms. Harold, no need to introduce me to your parents. Instead, why don't you learn about the real world and manners here at this company? You won't cancel my job offer? Thank you. Yes, I've been eager to hire you. Really? You still care about your eldest son's wife? We're family, right? You'll be in HR. HR? That sounds tedious. I mean, I'll do my best. Good. The HR manager is my longtime friend, known as a strict trainer for new employees. A strict trainer? She teaches formal language and manners. You seem to need it, as a person and as a professional. I already know manners, Susanna. I think I'd be more helpful with desk work. No. Someone like you should learn from her. What about being your secretary? I'm the president's daughter-in-law. Better than a complete stranger. You'll pay more than for desk work, right? You're my daughter? I stared coldly at Cindy. Someone who discriminates based on education and takes work lightly isn't my family. I won't make you my secretary. Learn and become someone who doesn't trouble society. That's the best thing you can do right now. What? I'm being polite here. What's with that tone? Just because you're the CEO doesn't mean you're better than me with my higher status. This discussion is over. Let's all work hard today. Wait, we're not done talking. Being pampered since childhood, it must have been humiliating for Cindy. Her whining continued, but I returned to my CEO's office. I thought Cindy would try to improve herself, but she quit within a week. She was fired for continuous, unexcused absences without even submitting a resignation letter. I scolded Adolf, saying if he thinks his behavior is normal, then he's been influenced by Cindy's irrationality. Unusually for me, I raised my voice, and Adolf seemed to finally realize. Calling me a stranger for being a high school dropout, I just treated her as one. It's Cindy's responsibility for lacking social skills and humanity. To this, he said, "Yeah, you're right." Adolf nodded. He said that Cindy's parents continued to stay at their new house, constantly speaking ill of me. "I'm getting a divorce," Adolf declared and returned the next day with his belongings. He shut the front door in front of a crying, pleading Cindy. Her parents scolded her for getting divorced so soon after the wedding, and now she's isolated in the new house. Adolf was like a deprogrammed person back to his former dutiful self. While I want him to be independent and married, having both sons back home for a while is a joy. A little more time just as a family won't hurt.